Welcome back to the Neshoba Valley Chamber's Business Bud podcast. My name is Melissa Fetterhoff. I'm the president and CEO of the Neshoba Valley Chamber. And today I'm here with Laura Sweet from Acton 10 Times Self-Storage. So today we're going to be learning about decluttering, storage, and even some small space living hacks. All fun things that I have recently had to tackle with a move. So super excited to. I mean, I guess it would have been great if we had this conversation a couple months ago, but but this will help other folks. So
That's right.
I'm excited.
Right.
So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and Acton 10 Times Self Storage?
Of course. I have been working in storage since 2019. Storage is pretty straightforward. I started working in storage because I needed it. I was at a time when my mother had passed away, and now I'm suddenly all these things of my mom's that I wanted to keep and none of my siblings wanted to keep. And I wasn't in a position to really take them into my life in my space because I was in apartments with roommates. And so I had to find a way to keep them until I had my own house to put them in. Then I suddenly had tons of storage spaces, and I was like, wait, if I work in storage, I get a discount on a storage space. So it helped with my expenses a little, and I learned some ways of pulling my own skill set together in a new way. I had all the skills, but in disparate and different career paths that came together really well in the storage space and the different things that you need to do as a storage manager. 10X Self Storage, we have 3 facilities, one in Acton, one in Worcester, and one in Marlborough.
Mm-hmm.
And the Worcester store, I believe, has the most units with over 600 units. And my facility is over 330 units. And the Marlborough is, I think, somewhere in between with just a little over 500 units. Maybe it's a little under 500. I can't remember the exact number. They are, like I said, we run extra clean facilities, and we have great staff, as well as myself and Ashley and William.
Well, let's start with the basics. What are some common reasons that people might need some storage?
There's actually a larger list of common reasons than you would think. Once you start listing them, you're like, oh, wow, there are a lot of things. So one of them is when your parents pass away, and you might want to keep your parents' stuff, but you're not ready to take it in to your living space. Another reason could be that you're facing illness, and you know that you'll come out the other side, and so you have to downsize your life for a moment, and then you'll be coming back stronger. And also when your parents might be moving out of their house into assisted living, and then they want to keep some things, and so you want to be able to say, yes, we'll keep your things for you. When your kids go to college and you want to turn their room into an office or a yoga studio or something, and then all their things get put into storage for them to pick up later in life. Then you also, when you are staging your house to be sold, then you want to have a really empty house, but you're a collector of something. You got to put your things away somewhere. And when you are in between spaces, sometimes a real estate move, sometimes there's a month or two gap where, there's the place you're moving to, suddenly the people who owned it before you, they want to rent from you for a little bit while you've already done the closing, but then you've agreed to let them rent from you because they offered you such a sweet rent for the first 2 months, and then you're staying in an apartment nearby. Well, so your stuff is in storage for that. There's probably
sure
more
we
reasons.
Could come up with
yeah,
so
and
many
like
more
the
reasons.
pandemic really was a reason for a lot of people to add storage into their lives, because suddenly they're all home way more often, and there was more people home than usual for more hours in the day. And so if you if you want to take on a boarder, if you want to have somebody living at home that wasn't living at home before, these are all reasons to need a storage space temporarily and put stuff away for a moment before you move it along.
You say temporarily, so nothing long term. Nothing, what would, I mean, not years. We're not talking necessarily, you know,
Ideally, you would treat storage as a temporary place to put stuff, but there are people who kind of set it and forget it. And they put stuff away with the intention of going through it and figuring out where the real items are that they want to keep and love. But life gets in the way,
it
and
does.
so many people end up staying in storage for years. And I do have many tenants who put things in units, and it takes them years to come back, and they still say, I don't know why it took me 5 years to get back here. And I'm always like, if you don't want to stay in storage for very long, you've got to come regularly. You've got to set a day, a week, or a day a month where you come and you face your stuff and you go through at least a box at a visit and make sure that you're in touch with what you've put away, because you are paying rent on this stuff every month and you want to be aware that's your stuff that you're adding a cost to your life for.
That's a great reminder that you give them. There are a lot of misconceptions about storage. What are some myths that you hear often?
Some of the common myths are things like I can put everything in storage, and you actually can't. You don't want to put any explosives or any really big flammable things. So, for example, that gas can that has had its day because you've switched to an electric mower, that's something you can't put in storage.
Mm-hmm.
You really don't want to put any kind of weapon, and by weapons I mean projectile weapons. Anything that's explosive is really not allowed. And food is
Mm.
definitely not allowed in storage. In fact, I made a mention to my building director, and I said, "Oh, I found some contraband. Somebody had left a bag of stuff by the elevator. It looks like it fell off their cart." And he was like, "Oh, I thought you were going to say drugs." And I said, "No, no, it was full of bags of pasta." And it was these little, like, you can buy them pre-cooked pasta where all you do is stick it in the microwave for 2 minutes and you suddenly have hot pasta. And there was like 20 bags of this ready-to-eat pasta. And I was just like, wow, this has got to be the worst, because it's pasta in plastic bags and little animals can chew right through plastic.
Mm-hmm.
And you do not want little animals to be attracted to your unit, not at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, any kind of food is not a good idea. Storage units are all the same. That is not true. That is a myth that really you can get a storage facility, a storage unit that is not climate controlled. It's basically like a barn. It's just walls and a roof and a door that locks on a campus that locks. And then you can put anything you would put in your garage, or anything, like you can put your boat in there, you can put a car in there, you can put outdoor furniture in there,
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of stuff like that. Wooden furniture does great in those kinds of spaces as well. And then there's climate controlled, which basically is habitable, but not exactly. Like, we would want a living space to have a temperature range of 65 degrees to 78, 80 degrees at the hottest. And in storage, it's something more like 55 degrees to 80 degrees
Okay.
is the range. And then the humidity is kept really low, so it's an aggressively dry space.
Yeah.
Whereas a living space, you're going to have a little more humid and a little tighter of a temperature range. So storage temperature control is a little different, but still very important for your electronics, for your fine arts, other like delicate items, delicate clothing, stuff
Okay.
like that.
Okay. So before storing items, it sounds like decluttering is definitely the key.
Decluttering is really important. You really want to assess what you're putting away and know that you're not storing stuff that you're going to come to 2 years from now and go, why did I bother to store this, and then throw it away. You want to throw it away before that, so you have the smallest storage space that you possibly need, and therefore pay the lowest rent that you can. And so, yes, going through your things and, using the method of sitting with the item for a hot minute and really thinking about how much do I like this and go through that checklist of how replaceable is it? How much does it cost for me to get a new one of these? Do I really love this? Does this have sentimental value? Will it suffice as a photograph of the sentimental value? And then how resellable is it? How much can I get for it? And those are the kinds of questions you want to ask of the items that you're going to put in storage.
A little bit. Have you ever done I think, Marie Kondo process that she has about decluttering?
No, I
I
don't.
love it. I
Okay.
forget what it's called, but she very similar has a process, and I'm telling you that by the time you have to like pick up an item, and in a very brief nutshell, you pick up the item, and it's if it brings you joy, you keep it. If you're not sure if it keep brings you joy, you still keep it because you haven't decided it doesn't bring you joy. If it doesn't bring you joy, then you can thank it for its service to you
Oh,
and you let it go. And by the time that you get to, she has this, like I said, she has a process. By the time you get to actual mementos, like like the picture of your mother from her, when or that she gave you, yada yada. When you pick it up, you're like, this was a great memory, but I have it as a memory, and I don't need this physical item. And you can let go of things. It's so the process of decluttering is amazing. That being said, I definitely have a lot of clutter.
wow. You just reminded me that I have back in the day when my mom was married, that was a very popular thing for the young woman to have a painting of herself in her wedding dress. And also there was the cotillions, the women,
Yeah.
the young women who came out in society who would wear basically a white wedding dress and then have a painting of themselves in a portrait, and that would they would keep that through the rest of their lives to remember themselves in their prime, sort of thing. I have that painting of my mother,
Wow.
and I was like, oh, I really don't need it. And a picture of this is honestly something, now that I'm going through this, talking about this, it's something that I could take a picture of and
Yeah.
be happy about having a photograph of it and not having the large. It's because it's a big
Yeah.
painting. It's and so, and then my mom was into theater, and I'd be able to give it to a theater as a set dressing
Oh.
item.
See? There you go.
So
That would be great. I
yeah.
love it. So, once people have decluttered, how should they prepare their items for storage?
Well, it depends on the item. But most of all, you want to remember storage is dusty. Everybody's stuff is there. You've got neighbors all around you, hundreds of people's stuff. And every time somebody moves stuff, the dust will get kicked up and into the air and resettle. And so each day that, each month that goes by, a little more dust is settling over your stuff. So you want to seal up for dust. And you want to remember that your movers don't necessarily care about that dust. And so you want the plastic seal around your stuff on the inside of a box, because the movers, as I learned personally, if they're carrying a plastic item and they bump into something and that's sharp and it tears a little hole in the plastic thing, they don't notice it, they don't care. It
Mm,
doesn't mean anything to them, but it means a lot to you in the
hmm.
end, because then bugs can get in and dust can get in through that little hole. So you want to make sure that you kind of like put your stuff in a box, in a plastic bag in that box, so that it, and then tape it up as tight as you can to really, and it also helps with any sort of humidity and moisture that may be in a, like if you're utilizing a non-climate controlled space,
Hmm.
you definitely want to seal up for that. To prepare furniture, especially cloth furniture, you want to have kind of cardboard on the corners of things, and then there's this stuff they call shrink wrap, and you shrink wrap it all up so that it's essentially sealed in plastic,
Okay.
and then it does a really good job of keeping the dust down on your stuff. And then you'll see the dust on the plastic and you'll be like, I'm so glad I did that.
Yep. And you mentioned folks can get all those items at
Yes,
Acton
we don't
Centers?
actually have the shrink wrap.
Okay.
I can recommend that you ask your mover in the process of finding a mover what kind of packing services they'll do for you.
Nice.
And the higher end movers all have this kind of furniture wrapping that I'm talking about. And the really high end guys will not only put a moving blanket around your furniture, but also shrink wrap it. And then you can literally buy those items from them to store your stuff so that it's protected that way while it's in storage.
Awesome. That's great. So, before we close, is there anything that we didn't cover that you want our listeners to know?
I think that you should insure your goods while it's stored.
Ooh, smart.
And if you're a homeowner or a renter and you have renter's insurance, your goods are protected. You just have to talk to your insurance company and make sure they understand your stuff will be at this storage location for this amount of time. And if you don't have either of those kinds of insurance, pretty much every storage facility that you will go to will have an insurance policy to offer to you, and at a level that you can feel comfortable with and afford. You want to make sure you get that insurance, because the fact is the storage facility isn't able to insure your goods, because how expensive would that be to insure everybody's stuff in a place? The insurance that a storage facility has is for the building, to make sure the building stays good, which you want that as well.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. So let's just remind our listeners, you're at 4 Post Office Square in Acton.
Yep.
Website is 10xselfstorage.com.
That's right. That's 10x selfstorage.com.
And Laura, how can people contact you if they have any questions?
Well, they can call 978-631-2485. That's my phone number at my facility. You can also email me at laura@10xselfstorage.com. Again, that's LAURA at 10xselfstorage.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
This was great.
It's a great opportunity.
Would have been fun chatting, doing some of this pre my move recently, but thank you so much. And also special thanks to AJ of Clear Signal Productions, who is our podcast coordinator. We don't have an actual title,
Producer.
but producer.
A great title.
That's a great title. That is.
Yeah.
And we're so grateful that we have AJ. So thank you so much, AJ.
Thank you, AJ.
Yes. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And we'll see you soon.